The Wyoming blizzard hit without warning, turning the high country into a white hell that could kill a man in minutes. Marshal John Wayne pushed his pickup truck through the swirling snow, windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the storm. At 68, he'd seen enough mountain winters to know this one was different, meaner, more dangerous than usual. The call had come in at 3 a.m. from a trucker whose rig had jackknifed on Highway 287. Marshal Wayne, I think I saw something in the snow. Looked like, hell, I don't know what it looked like. Now, 2 hours into the search, Wayne was beginning to think the trucker had been seeing things. The storm was disorienting, playing tricks with shadows and light. But Wayne had learned to trust his instincts over 35 years in law enforcement, and something kept pulling him toward the old mining road that led up into Apache Ridge. Apache Ridge. The name carried weight in this part of Wyoming, where the northern Apache had fought their last battles against cavalry troops more than a century ago. These days, it was mostly empty land, owned by the Wind River Apache Nation and leased to mining companies for mineral extraction. Wayne's headlights caught something that didn't belong, a flash of color against the white. He stopped the truck and grabbed his flashlight, pushing out into the storm. The wind hit him like a physical blow, driving snow into his face with the force of bullets. There, partially buried under a drift that had formed against a fallen log, was a hand. A small hand, brown-skinned, with fingers blue from cold. "Jesus Christ," Wayne muttered, dropping to his knees and beginning to dig frantically with his bare hands. The body emerged slowly from the snow. A young Apache woman, maybe 20 years old, wearing jeans and a down jacket that should have kept her warm, but hadn't been enough against this storm. Her face was pale, lips blue, eyes closed. Wayne pressed his ear to her chest and heard the faintest whisper of a heartbeat. "Stay with me, girl," he said, scooping her up in his arms. She was light, too light, and cold as ice. Wayne carried her to his truck, cranked the heat to maximum, and began the desperate process of trying to warm her back to life. He rubbed her hands, her arms, talking to her constantly. "Come on, darling, don't you quit on me now. What's your name? What were you doing out here?" Her breathing was so shallow it was barely visible. Wayne had seen hypothermia before, knew that she was minutes away from death. He pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Marshal Wayne. I need an ambulance at my location, Highway 287 near Apache Ridge. I've got a young woman, severe hypothermia, barely alive." "Marshal, no ambulance can get through this storm. Roads are completely blocked." "Then get me a helicopter." "Sir, no aircraft can fly in these conditions." Wayne looked down at the girl in his arms. Her breathing was getting weaker. "Dispatch, what's the closest medical facility?" "Dr. Sarah Running Bear at the tribal clinic, about 10 miles south of your position. Can you reach her?" "I'll try, sir." Wayne made a decision that went against everything he'd learned about moving hypothermia victims. He wrapped the girl in his coat and emergency blankets, then began the treacherous drive to the tribal clinic. The roads were barely passable, his truck sliding and fighting for traction, but he drove with the desperation of a man trying to save a life. Dr. Sarah Running Bear was waiting when he arrived. Her clinic lit up like a beacon in the storm. She was a woman in her 50s, Apache herself, with the steady hands and calm demeanor of someone who had seen everything. "Bring her inside, quickly," Dr. Running Bear directed, leading Wayne to a treatment room equipped with warming devices and monitoring equipment. For the next hour, Wayne watched as the doctor fought to bring the young woman back from the edge of death. Warm IV fluids, heated blankets, careful monitoring of her core temperature. Slowly, incrementally, the girl's condition began to improve. "She's going to make it," Dr. Running Bear finally said. But it was close. Another 10 minutes, and we would have lost her. "Any idea who she is?" "Her name is Annie Crow Feather. She's a geology student at the University of Wyoming. Her family lives on the reservation." "What was she doing out on Apache Ridge in this storm?" Dr. Running Bear's expression grew troubled. "That's what worries me, Marshal. Annie's been working on a research project about mineral deposits in the area. She's been asking questions that some people don't want answered." "What kind of questions?" about illegal mining operations on tribal land, about water contamination, about companies that are supposed to have permits but don't. Wayne felt the familiar tightening in his chest that came when a simple rescue turned into something more complicated. "Doctor, has Annie received any threats?" "Not directly, but her research advisor at the university was pressured to drop her project, and there have been incidents." "What kind of incidents?" "Flat tires, break-ins at her apartment, computer files corrupted, the kind of things that could be accidents but probably aren't." As if summoned by their conversation, Annie's eyes fluttered open. She was groggy, confused, but alive. Where am I?" she whispered. "You're safe," Wayne said, moving closer to her bedside. "I'm Marshall Wayne. I found you in the snow up on Apache Ridge. Do you remember what happened?" Annie tried to sit up, then winced and lay back down. "The storm. I was taking soil samples near the old copper mine when the weather turned. I tried to get back to my truck, but the wind was so strong." "What happened to your truck?" I think someone moved it. I left it by the mine entrance, but when I came back it was gone." Wayne and Dr. Running Bear exchanged glances. This was starting to sound less like an accident and more like attempted murder. "Annie," Wayne said gently, "is there anyone who might want to hurt you? Anyone who's been pressuring you about your research? There's a company, Blackstone Mining. They've been trying to get new leases on Apache land, but my research shows their current operations are already contaminating the groundwater." "Have you reported this contamination?" "I tried. I sent my findings to the EPA, to the State Environmental Agency, to the Tribal Council, but nothing's been done." "Who else knows about your research?" "My advisor, Professor Matthews. And I think someone's been watching me, following me." Wayne felt the pieces of a puzzle beginning to form in his mind. A young Apache woman investigating illegal mining operations. A convenient accident during a blizzard that should have killed her. A missing truck that suggested premeditation. "Annie, I need you to think carefully. Did you see anyone else up on Apache Ridge today? Any other vehicles?" "There was a black SUV parked near the access road when I drove up. I thought it was strange because the mine's supposed to be closed." "Did you get a license plate?" "Partial. It started with BM. I remember thinking it might stand for Blackstone Mining." Dr. Running Bear checked Annie's vital signs. "She needs rest, Marshall. The hypothermia put a tremendous strain on her system." "Of course, but doctor, I'm going to post a deputy outside her room. If someone tried to kill her once, they might try again." As Wayne prepared to leave, Annie grabbed his hand. "Marshall, there's something else. I hid copies of my research data. If something happens to me, promise me you'll make sure it gets to the right people." "Nothing's going to happen to you, Annie. But just in case, where did you hide the data?" "My grandfather's cabin, up in Bear Canyon. There's a loose floorboard under the wood stove. Everything's there. Soil samples, water test results, photographs of illegal dumping sites." Wayne squeezed her hand. "I promise you, if there's illegal activity going on, we'll stop it. Be careful, Marshall. These people have a lot of money and they don't care who they hurt to protect it." As Wayne drove back through the storm toward his office, his mind was already working through the investigation ahead. A young woman had nearly died tonight, and he was becoming convinced it wasn't an accident. Tomorrow, when the storm cleared, he would drive up to Apache Ridge and see what Blackstone Mining was so desperate to hide. But tonight, he had saved a life, and sometimes in this job that had to be enough. The storm had passed by morning, leaving Wyoming's high country buried under 3 feet of fresh snow that sparkled like diamonds in the early sunlight. Marshall Wayne stood in the parking lot of the tribal clinic, studying the tire tracks that led away from where Annie's truck should have been parked. Dr. Running Bear joined him with 2 cups of coffee. "Annie's stable this morning. Temperature's back to normal, but she's still weak." "Good. I'll need to talk to her again, but first I want to check out this mine site." "Marshall, be careful up there. That's rough country, even in good weather." Wayne's radio crackled. "Marshall Wayne, this is Deputy Rodriguez. We found Annie Crowfeather's truck." "Where?" "Bottom of Willow Creek Canyon, about 5 miles from where you found her. Looks like it went off the road during the storm." "I'll be right there." The drive to Willow Creek Canyon took Wayne through some of the most beautiful country in Wyoming. rolling hills covered in snow, with the Wind River Mountains rising in the distance like ancient sentinels. But his mind wasn't on the scenery. Someone had moved Annie's truck and pushed it into the canyon to make her disappearance look like an accident. Deputy Rodriguez was waiting by the canyon rim when Wayne arrived. Rodriguez was a good man, Apache himself, who knew the country better than most. "What do you think, Carlos?" "I think someone wanted us to believe she drove off the road in the storm. But look at this." Rodriguez pointed to tire tracks in the snow. "These tracks show the truck was pushed, not driven. And there are footprints from at least 2 people. Wayne studied the evidence. "Any way to get down there and examine the truck?" "I called for a tow truck with a winch. Should be here in an hour." While they waited, Wayne decided to visit Annie's grandfather's cabin in Bear Canyon. The old man might have information about Blackstone Mining's activities in the area. Bear Canyon was a narrow valley carved by centuries of snowmelt, dotted with aspen groves that would be green in summer, but now stood like white bones against the snow. The cabin sat in a clearing beside a frozen creek, smoke rising from its chimney. Joseph Crow Feather was exactly what Wayne expected. A man in his 70s with long gray braids, wearing traditional beaded clothing mixed with practical winter gear. His eyes held the wisdom of someone who had seen the world change dramatically in his lifetime. "Marshal Wayne, I heard you saved my granddaughter's life." "Just did my job, Mr. Crowfeather." "How is Annie doing?" "Physically, she'll recover. But emotionally," Joseph shook his head. "She's frightened. This wasn't an accident." "I agree. That's why I'm here. Annie mentioned she hid some research data in your cabin." Joseph's expression grew serious. "Come inside. There are things you need to understand about what's happening on our land." The cabin was warm and comfortable, decorated with traditional Apache artwork and family photographs. Joseph led Wayne to the wood stove and pulled up the loose floorboard Annie had mentioned. Inside was a waterproof container filled with documents, photographs, and soil sample vials. "Annie's been working on this for months," Joseph explained. "What she found, it's worse than just illegal mining." Wayne studied the documents. Annie's research showed that Blackstone Mining had been operating outside their permitted areas for over 2 years, dumping toxic waste directly into groundwater that fed the reservation's wells. "These water test results," Wayne said, looking at a lab report, "this is mercury, lead, arsenic, levels that could poison an entire community. And they have been poisoning us. Cancer rates on the reservation have tripled in the last 5 years. Livestock dying, crops failing. We thought it was just bad luck. Who else knows about this research?" Annie shared her preliminary findings with the tribal council last month, but before we could take action, council members started receiving threats. "What kind of threats?" "Phone calls in the middle of the night, dead animals left on doorsteps, cars vandalized. The message was clear: keep quiet or face consequences." Wayne felt his anger building. "Mr. Crowfeather, I need to ask you something. Do you trust me?" "Annie trusted you enough to tell you about this hiding place. That's good enough for me, because I'm going to need your help to stop this, and it's going to be dangerous." Joseph smiled grimly. "Marshal, my people have been facing danger from white mining companies for over a century. We're still here." Wayne's radio interrupted them. "Marshal, this is Rodriguez. You need to get back here. We got the truck out of the canyon, and you're not going to like what we found." 20 minutes later, Wayne stood beside Annie's damaged truck in the impound lot behind the sheriff's station. The vehicle had been thoroughly searched, and what Rodriguez had found confirmed Wayne's worst suspicions. "Look at this," Rodriguez said, pointing to scratches around the door locks. "Someone broke into this truck before pushing it into the canyon. What were they looking for?" "This." Rodriguez held up a laptop computer badly damaged by the crash and exposure to snow. "And they found it. Hard drive's been removed." "So they got her research." "Not all of it. Annie was smart. She kept copies hidden." Wayne examined the truck more carefully. "Carlos, look at this paint transfer on the rear bumper. Looks like someone rammed her truck from behind. Black paint, like from that SUV Annie mentioned. We need to find that SUV." Put out a bolo for any black vehicles with front-end damage. Wayne's phone rang. It was Dr. Running Bear. Marshal, you need to get over here. Someone tried to break into Annie's room last night. Is she okay? She's fine. The deputy you posted scared them off. But Marshal, they left something behind. At the clinic, Wayne examined the note that had been slipped under Annie's door. Drop the research or next time you won't be so lucky. Annie was sitting up in bed, looking pale but determined. They're not going to scare me off, Marshal. Annie, these people have already tried to kill you once. Maybe you should consider what? Letting them poison my people, letting them destroy our land for profit. I'm not saying give up. I'm saying let me handle the investigation from here. With respect, Marshal, your investigation could take months. My people are being poisoned right now. Joseph Crow Feather entered the room. Annie, I've been talking with the Tribal Council. We've decided to take action. What kind of action? Wayne asked. We're going to shut down Blackstone's illegal operations ourselves. Mr. Crow Feather, you can't take the law into your own hands. Marshal, what law? The law that allows corporations to poison our water? The law that ignores our complaints when we ask for help? Wayne understood their frustration, but he also knew that vigilante action would only make things worse. Give me 72 hours. Let me build a case against Blackstone using Annie's research. If I can't get federal authorities involved by then, I won't stop you from taking action. And in the meantime, Annie asked, in the meantime, you stay here where you're safe, and I go up to Apache Ridge to see exactly what Blackstone is hiding. Marshal, Joseph said quietly, if you're going up there, you won't be going alone. I appreciate the offer, but it's not an offer. It's a statement of fact. You saved my granddaughter's life. Now we protect yours. That afternoon, Wayne found himself leading a convoy of vehicles up the winding road to Apache Ridge. In addition to his own truck and Deputy Rodriguez, he was accompanied by 3 Apache men, Joseph's sons and nephew, all of whom knew the country better than any map could show. The Blackstone mining operation was larger than Wayne had expected. What was supposed to be a small copper extraction site looked more like an industrial complex, with heavy machinery, storage tanks, and settling ponds that definitely weren't on any environmental permit he'd seen. Jesus, Rodriguez whispered, studying the site through binoculars. Look at that runoff. A stream of discolored water flowed from the mining site directly into the creek that fed the reservation's water supply. The snow around the discharge point was stained brown and yellow. That's not legal, Wayne said. Not even close. One of Joseph's sons, Robert Crow Feather, pointed to a section of the site. Marshal, look at those trucks. Wayne focused his binoculars on a convoy of tanker trucks that were dumping liquid waste directly into an open pit. They're not even trying to hide it, because they think no one's watching, Robert said. Or they think no one with authority is watching. Wayne was documenting the violations with his camera when Rodriguez grabbed his arm. Company coming! A black SUV was approaching their position, moving fast. Wayne could see at least 3 men inside, and they didn't look like they were coming to chat. Time to go, Wayne said. But as they reached their vehicles, Wayne realized they'd been flanked. 2 more SUVs were blocking the road behind them. Looks like Blackstone doesn't want us leaving, Joseph said calmly. Wayne checked his weapon and radio. Carlos, call for backup. Already tried. We're too far out. Radio's not reaching anyone. Doom. The lead SUV stopped about 50 yards away, and 3 men got out. They were dressed like security guards, but they carried themselves like military contractors. Professional muscle. You folks are on private property, the lead man called out. You need to leave immediately. This is public land, Wayne called back, showing his badge. Federal Marshal Wayne. And you are? Tom Morrison, Blackstone Security. This area is restricted due to dangerous mining operations. I don't see any restriction signs, and I'd like to see your permits for this operation. Morrison's expression hardened. Marshal, I'm going to ask you one more time to leave peacefully, and I'm going to ask you to explain why your company is dumping toxic waste into a water supply that serves thousands of people. I don't know what you're talking about. Wayne held up his camera. I've got photographs that say otherwise. Morrison spoke into a radio, then looked back at Wayne. "Marshal, my supervisors would like to speak with you. They're willing to make this worth your while if you forget what you think you saw here today." "Is that a bribe?" "It's an opportunity for mutual understanding." Wayne felt the familiar fire building in his chest. These men thought they could buy him off, just like they'd probably bought off other officials. "Here's my understanding," Wayne said. "You're under arrest for environmental crimes, attempted bribery of a federal officer, and conspiracy." Morrison laughed. "Marshal, you're outnumbered 6-2. "Actually," Joseph Crowfeather said quietly, "he's outnumbered 6-8. Morrison looked around and realized that 3 more Apache men had appeared from the rocks above them, all carrying hunting rifles. "Gentlemen," Wayne said, "I suggest you put your hands where I can see them." The standoff on Apache Ridge lasted 3 tense hours before federal backup finally arrived. 6 FBI agents and 2 environmental enforcement officers surrounded the Blackstone security team, while Wayne photographed and documented everything he could see of the illegal mining operation. Tom Morrison and his men were arrested, but Wayne knew this was just the beginning. The real criminals, the executives and officials who had authorized this environmental disaster, were probably already destroying evidence and preparing legal defenses. "Marshal Wayne," FBI agent Patricia Wells approached him as the last of the Blackstone security team was loaded into transport vehicles. "We need to talk." Agent Wells was a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in environmental crimes. Wayne had worked with her before and respected her tenacity. "Agent Wells, I've got enough evidence here to shut down this entire operation." "Maybe, but we've got a bigger problem. While you were up here playing cowboys and Indians—" "Agent Wells," Joseph Crowfeather interrupted quietly, "I would appreciate it if you didn't use that phrase." Wells had the grace to look embarrassed. "Sorry. While you were up here conducting your investigation, someone broke into the tribal clinic and tried to kidnap Annie Crowfeather." Wayne felt his blood run cold. "Is she safe?" "She's alive. Dr. Running Bear and your deputy fought them off. But Marshal, these people are escalating. They're not just trying to cover up environmental crimes anymore. They're willing to commit murder." "Any idea who's behind it?" "We have some leads. One of Morrison's men is talking in exchange for protection. Apparently, there's a network of officials who've been taking money from Blackstone to look the other way." "How high does it go?" "Higher than you might think. State Environmental Agency, EPA Regional Office, maybe even Federal Judiciary." Wayne studied the mining site in the distance. "Agent Wells, how long will it take to build a case against the people really responsible for this?" "Months, maybe years. These kinds of corruption cases are complicated. People are being poisoned right now. Annie's research shows cancer rates tripling on the reservation." "I understand the urgency, but—" "No, I don't think you do." Wayne's voice carried the authority of 3 decades in law enforcement. "These people tried to murder a young woman to cover up their crimes. They're not going to stop because we arrested a few security guards." Joseph Crowfeather approached them. "Marshal, Agent Wells, there's something you need to know. The tribal council met while you were up here. They voted to take direct action." "What kind of direct action?" Wells asked. "Tomorrow morning we're shutting down the Blackstone operation ourselves." "Mr. Crowfeather, you can't—" "Agent Wells, with all due respect, this is tribal land. We have sovereign rights. But if you interfere with a federal investigation, then charge us. But our people won't drink poisoned water while you build your case." Wayne understood the tribal council's frustration, but he also knew that direct action could result in violence. "Joseph, give us 1 more day. Let me try something." "What do you have in mind?" "I'm going to force their hand, make them come after me instead of your people." That evening, Wayne called a press conference at the tribal clinic. Local reporters, a crew from the regional news station, and a freelance journalist who had been following environmental issues in the area gathered in the clinic's conference room. Wayne had never been comfortable with media attention, but sometimes you had to use every tool available. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday I found a young Apache woman nearly dead in the snow. What appeared to be an accident was actually attempted murder, designed to cover up one of the most serious environmental crimes I've seen in 35 years of law enforcement. Wayne displayed enlarged photographs of the illegal mining operation. Blackstone Mining Corporation has been operating outside their permits for over 2 years, dumping toxic waste directly into the water supply that serves the Wind River Apache Nation. The contamination includes mercury, lead, and arsenic at levels that could kill. Marshal Wayne, one reporter asked, what action is being taken against Blackstone? The FBI and EPA are investigating. But I'm calling for immediate suspension of all Blackstone operations pending a full environmental assessment. Has Blackstone responded to these allegations? Not directly, but they have responded by sending armed security personnel to intimidate witnesses and by attempting to kidnap the researcher who discovered their illegal activities. Marshal, the freelance journalist asked, do you have evidence of official corruption in this case? Wayne had been hoping for that question. I have evidence that suggests certain officials may have been influenced to ignore Blackstone's violations. This investigation is ongoing. Within an hour of the press conference, Wayne's phone was ringing constantly. Calls from Blackstone's lawyers, from state environmental officials, from politicians who suddenly wanted to discuss the situation. But the call that worried him most came from Sheriff Morrison, no relation to the Blackstone security chief. John, you need to be careful. I just got a call from the State Attorney General's office. They're saying you've overstepped your authority. How so? They're claiming this is a state environmental issue, not a federal matter. They want you to turn over all evidence to state investigators. The hell I will. This involves federal environmental laws and attempted murder of a federal witness. I'm just telling you what they said. Watch your back. Wayne hung up and looked around the clinic waiting room, where Annie was now staying for her own protection. She was reviewing her research data with Dr. Running Bear and Joseph Crow Feather. Annie, are you sure about these cancer statistics? Absolutely. I've been tracking them for 2 years. The pattern is undeniable. And the contamination levels? Getting worse every month. Marshal, if this isn't stopped soon, people are going to start dying. Wayne made a decision that went against everything he'd learned about proper procedure. Annie, I need you to call that freelance journalist, the one from the press conference. Tell him you'll give him an exclusive interview about your research. But won't that compromise the investigation? It might, but it will also make it impossible for them to cover this up. That night, Wayne couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch of his cabin, looking out at the snow-covered mountains and thinking about corruption, justice, and the price of doing what was right. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Marshal Wayne, stop your investigation or face the consequences. This is your only warning. Wayne deleted the message and checked his weapon. They'd already tried to kill Annie. Now they were coming after him. Fine. He'd been in this business long enough to know that sometimes you had to take a stand, regardless of the consequences. Tomorrow, he was going back to Apache Ridge, and this time he was going to shut down Blackstone's operation permanently. But as he prepared for bed, Wayne couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something much bigger and more dangerous than environmental crime. Someone with serious money and political connections was behind this operation. And they'd already proven they were willing to kill to protect their interests. Wayne had saved Annie Crow Feather's life 3 days ago. Now he had to save his own. Dawn came grey and cold over the Wyoming mountains as Marshal Wayne prepared for what he knew would be the most dangerous day of his career. The Blackstone Mining Corporation had responded to his press conference with predictable fury, lawsuits, political pressure, and threats that left no doubt they would escalate to violence. At the tribal clinic, Wayne found Annie Crow Feather looking stronger, but determined to see this through to the end. Marshal, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about forcing their hand. Annie, you need to stay here where it's safe. No. This started because they tried to kill me. It needs to end with me facing them. Dr. Running Bear looked up from checking Annie's vitals. Marshal, she's medically cleared for discharge. And frankly, she might be safer with you than staying here. How do you figure that? Because they've already tried to break in here twice. Next time, they might succeed. Wayne's radio crackled with Deputy Rodriguez's voice. Marshal, you need to get down here. We've got federal marshals at the station with arrest warrants. Arrest warrants for who? For you, sir. Wayne felt the floor drop out from under him. What are the charges? Exceeding federal authority, interfering with lawful business operations, conspiracy to commit domestic terrorism. Domestic terrorism. They're claiming your press conference incited the tribal council to plan violent action against Blackstone. Wayne looked at Annie and Dr. Running Bear. They're playing hardball. Joseph Crowfeather entered the room, his face grim. Marshal, there's something else. Federal agents raided the tribal council offices an hour ago. They confiscated all records related to Blackstone. This is a coordinated effort to shut down the investigation. Yes, and it's working. Half the tribal council is afraid to continue opposing Blackstone. Annie stood up, stronger than she'd appeared in days. Then we do this without them. Annie? Marshal, my research is solid. The contamination is real. People are dying. I won't let them cover this up because they bought off some federal officials. Wayne made a decision that would either end his career or save hundreds of lives. Joseph, how many of your people are still willing to take direct action? 20, maybe 30. All veterans, all trained. And Agent Wells? Where does she stand? Agent Wells is clean, but her superiors are pressuring her to back off. Wayne pulled out his phone and called Agent Wells directly. Patricia, it's John Wayne. I need to know where you stand. John, I've been ordered to arrest you if I see you. That's not what I asked. Wells was quiet for a moment. Off the record, this whole thing stinks. Someone with serious juice is protecting Blackstone. Will you help us? I can't officially help you, but if evidence of environmental crimes happened to appear in my inbox, I'd be obligated to investigate. Understood. Wayne hung up and looked around the room. Here's what we're going to do. Joseph, I need your people to secure the mining site and document everything. Annie, I need you to get your complete research to Agent Wells. Dr. Running Bear, I need you to compile medical records showing the health impacts. And you? Joseph asked. I'm going to surrender to those federal marshals and create a distraction while you do what needs to be done. Marshal, Annie said quietly, they'll destroy your career. Maybe, but they won't destroy the evidence if we do this right. 2 hours later, Wayne walked into the county sheriff's station with his hands raised. 3 federal marshals were waiting, along with a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Blackstone's corporate counsel. Marshal Wayne, the lead federal marshal said, you're under arrest for exceeding federal authority and conspiracy charges. I understand. Can I make one phone call? You'll have access to an attorney. Actually, I want to call my ex-wife. Tell her I might not make it to our grandson's birthday party. The phone call was brief and coded. Wayne's ex-wife, a retired FBI agent herself, understood immediately that he was asking her to contact certain federal officials who couldn't be bought. As Wayne was being processed, his phone, which the marshals hadn't confiscated yet, buzzed with messages from news outlets around the country. The story was going national. Marshal Wayne, Blackstone's lawyer, approached him. My clients are prepared to drop all charges if you publicly retract your allegations and turn over all evidence. That's not going to happen. Think carefully. Your pension, your reputation, your freedom, all of that goes away if you continue this crusade. Mr. Lawyer, I've been thinking about something. 3 days ago, I pulled a young woman out of the snow. She was nearly dead because your clients tried to murder her. And you know what I realized as I held her in my arms, trying to keep her breathing? What's that? I realized that some things are more important than pensions and reputations. At that moment, Wayne's phone exploded with notifications. The freelance journalist had published Annie's complete research online, including photographs, water test results, and medical data showing the health impacts on the reservation. Within minutes, major news networks were picking up the story. Environmental groups were calling for federal intervention. Politicians who had been taking Blackstone money were suddenly distancing themselves from the company. "Marshal," the lead federal marshal said quietly, "I just got a call from Washington. Your arrest has been suspended pending review." Blackstone's lawyer looked panicked. "That's not possible. The charges were filed through proper channels." Apparently, someone higher up the food chain disagrees. Wayne's phone rang. It was Agent Wells. "John, you need to get up to Apache Ridge immediately." "What's happening?" "Joseph's people have secured the mining site, and what they found is worse than we thought. Blackstone wasn't just dumping mining waste. They were using the site to dispose of toxic materials from other operations across the region." "How bad is it?" "Superfund site bad. This is going to require massive federal intervention." As Wayne left the sheriff's station a free man, he found Joseph Crow Feather waiting in the parking lot. "How's Annie?" Wayne asked. "Strong, angry, ready to testify before Congress."